Are you looking for something fun and unique to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High-quality metal pinback buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $33 for 100 buttons shipped in the U.S. Message me on IG at Everything Remade to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to tell you about our Patreon page, which you can find at patreon.com/humanmachine. Signing up there is basically a digital subscription to Sparks, where you can read pages almost daily from the new zines that come out every month. In addition to that, you'll also find out about the music I've been up to and other different things that I'm working on. And now I'm going to let my friend Mace take this week's episode away with their really fun interview of DC queercore band Black Eyes. You're hearing Deformative by Black Eyes, which was released in April 2003 on Discord Records. If you're into artful, weirdo, queer punk rock, you really need to check this band out if you're not already familiar.
Sunset behind that chain link fence, you put that tiny candle in my hand, you put that chrism on my forehead with your fingers crossed, you held my wrist, now I'll never forget that pebble pushing up and into my knee. You set the sky light up, you set the sky light up, and all the kids in the playground waiting for the light up. You set the sky lit sign, you set the sky lit sign, and I was watching the blue in your eyes come by. You set the sky light up, you set the sky light up, and we were all waiting for. And all I feel anymore, no I can't see anymore. I didn't like it, I was excited by it. What will I say when I get home? I'm in the window, I'm at the door.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for meeting up with me for a little bit. This is for Edie Quinn's zine called Sparks. So it's just going to be a quick little 7-question interview. But yeah, we'll jump right in since we're a little crunched on time. Y'all's first show was less than 2 weeks after 9/11, and your reunion's now in the wake of a lot of massive political and cultural events, pandemic, genocide, targeted political campaigns against trans people, etc. How would you compare your reception and experience as a band now to then?
This is Hero. Well, we clearly didn't fix all the problems. But that was sort of a flippant answer to a very serious question. But I don't know, for me it feels like so much of the stuff that we were reacting to in the moment is still present in ways that are equally relevant, even if they're not taking the exact same form they were. So like, I don't know, if you look at for example, harmful manifestations of transphobia around us were happening in sort of informal ways that were more about violence happening and then a lack of response to it, whereas now we're seeing much more organized and targeted and politically orchestrated targeting of trans people. And so I think there's a degree to which it's not that nothing has changed, but the things that are on our minds now and that we're reacting to are still very present. And, I think a lot of what we're responding to is violence, state violence, just like casual violence. And that's not everything that we were responding to or focused on, but it feels like, I don't know, sort of like same enemies, different faces, maybe?
For sure.
Some of the same faces.
Yeah, Daniel, this is, as far as the reception of the band, I mean, that almost seems like the least important part. I think it's just, very infuriating to see like the same cycles too of violence. Obviously, like we were playing, we saw the weapons of mass destruction lie and like the invasion of Afghanistan, all this stuff happening in real time as a response to 9/11, and now seeing what's happening in Palestine is like, oh great, like there's like an event that like sort of triggers like a trigger finger sort of like, and now it's like this sort of excuse for extreme anti-Arab violence and like just violence and death that is like not going to solve anything that like allegedly is part of the thing you're responding to, and it's surreal and upsetting to see essentially like a pattern that we witnessed just as civilians. I mean, people in the world playing out again, 20 years later, and feeling like, oh, like, the U.S.'s response being so on board to fund and enable genocide, knowing full well in our own lifetimes that, like, whatever initial fucking attack started this wave of killings, like, that it's like, it's clearly not a response to try to like address that, and that it's like
the supposed kickoff event is huge.
Exactly.
The supposed kickoff event is a pretext for something else.
Yeah.
But then I think the other thing too that is frustrating, and so this is so not about the reception of our band, it is about the stuff that we're responding to and on some level are, but like I think it's one of the things too is seeing the ways in which the sort of official violence and the rhetoric around it and how it's presented that also triggers a lot of this informal violence that's just happening in everyday people's lives, like
exactly.
So.
Yeah.
But it's also the kickoff event, right? The triggering event's never the start of it. It was never the start of it.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But I guess one way we respond to that is to bang really loudly on stuff and shout a lot because it helps us deal with it. But also, I think it's just like I think I needed often in the face of huge problems that I myself can't address, some kind of cathartic support from people making music or art that can help me at least process it and feel some kind of hope or solidarity, even if it's not gonna like necessarily like stop a hospital being blown up in Gaza, but just some kind of thing to create a sense of community and togetherness in the face of shit that's just horrifying.
Well said.
All right. Next question. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Google Play once put out a Discord Records sample pack about a decade ago. This is how I found y'all and Discord as a teenager. But during your first run, you were kind of the fresh faces of an already very established label. So I was wondering, especially from the couple of y'all that are not raised in the DC area, how you first found Discord.
There's two of us to answer that, I guess.
So this is Jacob. I mean, it was Fugazi tapes that were just available at the mall. Really. I mean, I don't know when. I can't even remember what it was that I heard about them, but it's just like they were available. So just finding out about stuff, like punk stuff or whatever, and it was like, oh, check that out.
Yeah, truthfully for me, Pearl Jam is how I found out about Fugazi.
Say your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Not Daniel. Dan. No, when I was like probably around 13, reading like an interview with Eddie Vedder, who said one of his favorite musicians of all time was Ian MacKaye from Fugazi. And that's when I first heard about Fugazi. And then, explored it from there basically as like music, taste change and everything. But that was the initial.
Oh yeah. Any DC folks have a fun story?
Daniel, first of all, in the late 90s or mid-late 90s when we were all discovering punk music, Discord was one of the most respected labels and most prominent labels. So it would be harder not to find it, I think, at that time. I do not remember when I first became aware of it, but I found out about a lot of punk stuff initially from some books, like Rollins Get in the Van, this photography book banned in DC that these 3 women in the scene put together that was like a document of early 80s hardcore scene in DC and a few other sort of resources like that. But I feel like one thing that was cool about growing up in the area was once you like tapped into it, it was like right there. It was this thing that was happening, you know, so close to you. Like, I mean, my friend in high school's dad had been in a band called Half Japanese that had like done a lot of touring. You could go see Fugazi and other local bands play for free up the street. The clubs were all ages. So like once you found out about it, it wasn't like, oh, can I get in? Will the door person let me in? I have to wait till I'm 21. I have to take some special train. It was like in a neighborhood like next to where I grew up. You could go see like legendary band. It was right there. And that was a very exciting feeling as a young person where you're like, it's suddenly like finding a secret room in your house. And you're like, yeah.
This is Mike. I think it was Older Sibling Network.
Classic.
Yeah, older siblings introduced friends to Fugazi, and they encouraged me to get a ticket for a show, so I saw them. Which the first live music I ever saw Hoover, Slant Six, and Fugazi at Rich Coliseum in University of Maryland, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, it was so great.
It's a pretty good show.
It was a great show, and I think it was right before And on the Kill Ticket came out, I think it was right before they were going to go record the first version of the Kill Ticket, so they were playing a lot of those songs. Went back and found it on the live archive. And then, like Daniel said, like after that, it's just accessible. Like if you know where to look, it's just accessible. First job was as a volunteer at Fort Reno, as Daniel was saying, which is where you go and see free outdoor shows. Ended up booking shows at Fort Reno and just like meeting everybody and just, that experience is, it was pretty amazing to be just openly welcomed.
Yeah. All right. So the ending of Holy Holies, contextually especially, still one of my favorite portraits of queer life. It's kind of just like this visceral translation of it that can only be painted by participation in them. It's a kind of excitement I personally feel entering like heavily trans spaces, and it's something I've been finding in like cybergrind and around it presently. So wondering if any of y'all are familiar with cybergrind, and if not, what your favorite queer heavy thing happening culturally is at present.
I am not familiar with cybergrind. I'm Hugh. This is Hugh. My favorite queer thing happening.
Queer/queer heavy, you know.
Queer heavy thing happening culturally at the moment. I might need to think about that for a minute. Like, cause partially it's like, for me right now, it was like me and my husband like ragging on how shitty Fellow Travelers was while we were watching it. Like that was like, it was bad. It was really bad. But I don't think that's a good answer. So if anyone else wants to answer, I'll come back.
Shit talking's classic queer pastime. So.
Yeah, that's Praxis.
Daniel, I think, I live in New York and I'm pretty entrenched in the electronic music community, so I'm not aware of cybergrind, but I feel like I can imagine maybe some of these Transpicos shows might be having it, like fast BPM.
It's big right now in the Midwest, so it's a lot of like small DIY and like this kind of scale venues.
I see, okay, yeah.
What is it?
Cybergrind, it's like, I would say it's kind of a riff on MySpace era, like electronic post-hardcore, but it goes harder.
Oh, it's like a music genre.
Yeah, it's music genre. That's why I was like, it seemed a little out there, but I was like, it's massive right now in like the underground queer circle.
Oh,
so
yeah, I mean, I think in New York techno and electronic music, there's like a huge wave of like current like trans DJs and queer DJs, and like especially when I first got into electronic music in New York, it was I moved there in 2010, and it was like a lot of like more cis, many men DJing, and like there was a sort of old guard homogeneity to it, and there's like a ton of exciting artists like Juliana Huxtable and Holly Cakes and Lido and other people who are just doing like cool, sick techno and kind of like wild, like genre mashing, chaotic stuff. I'm a big fan of also the artist Alicia Crampton, who has a new album that I don't remember the alias, but the record name is DJE. And yeah, I think like this sort of like new wave of like very electronic collision, like ripped up dance music is sick. I like it.
Hell yeah.
This is Mike. I am not aware of Solid Grind. I guess I think this is fair to say something that's fresh in my head is Deli Girls. And like we played with them in New York. They are like I remember coming upstairs during the set to completely overwhelmed, like almost like too much, but not. It's just fucking amazing.
What you're describing, this is Hugh, Cybercrime, reminds me so much of the bar record that came out in like 2004, 2006, where it's like, he's just talking over beats, as was his thing, Brendan Feller, but he's like, you take thousands of kids all over this country who are trying to figure out their own alienation. He's talking about like how not into New York stuff he is at that point. He's like, but you take 1,000 kids all over the country trying to figure out their alienation, and then you pit them versus like the 20 cool kids of the cool kids nation. And like, I like the idea that there's like young people doing their thing out in places that aren't necessarily like big coastal cities, like making their shit happen and like making their towns and the spaces they live in feel like more alive to them. So I'm gonna just go ahead and say that's my favorite thing that I've heard about tonight.
All right. Anyone else want to answer?
I'm not tapped into that at all.
Okay.
I have to be honest. Like
It's all
couldn't
good.
even begin to answer that.
So like any punk, I'm obnoxiously firm about very specific things. One of them is cross-medium engagement, and I know both poetry and films have been cited as references to like the original albums. So what is something that is text or visually based that's been inspiring or informing you either as an individual or through music?
Personally, I'm very influenced by the writing of David Markson, who I found after the band broke up. So for like new lyrics and stuff, he has a way of writing, like on books like Wittgenstein's Mistress, and I've read a second one that I can't remember the name of. But it's like very like list based, and so it's just like tight, like single thought, and over a whole novel, it kind of like accumulates into this really like deep web of like associative currents and stuff like that. And I started reading his work in 2008 and was really taken with it in terms of like a way of delivering a message, not through like direct statement, but through this kind of like accumulation and build-up of a sort of vibe. And so that's been something that like lyrically has been guiding my work both like in and out of the band in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I've been re-engaging with Derek Jarman's both film work and also like his writing, but particularly the garden that he built at Prospect Cottage towards the end of his life. And that's sort of like the process of creation of both film and the garden as these sort of both memorials to his own life, but sort of like an act of resistance against his like illness and death. And the way he built it is just this bleak part of England, like by the sea, this incredibly gorgeous cottage that uses all of the barrenness and all of the shale and all of the very like salt tolerant plants and driftwood and just shit that washed up on the beach and like by a nuclear plant to just create this incredibly beautiful place that isn't even trying to be different from the barren background it's from. It's very much a part of it, but it's like this incredible expression of life in the face of what doesn't look like a lot of life and illness and death.
Fuck, there's something else I'm thinking of. Dan, I'm gonna try that.
mean, I'll say this is not direct. This is not direct. This is Mike. This is not directly answer your question. I don't think so. But I feel like when we get together, we talk a lot about books, music, film, whatever, and learning from each of these folks that that I some music with, like interact with, about what everybody's reading, about what everybody's watching. Is an incredibly rewarding experience. And I think that the first time I heard of the Giovanni was because we quoted the Giovanni, right? It's just amazing to be in a space where you just learn all the time.
Yeah, I agree with
that. Also, another one that was big for me was, in a similar way, I'm pretty sure it's Jenny Holzer. I saw exhibit of these specific flyers she made in LA, and it's long lists of extremely intense and sort of surrealistically violent statements, and it was just break the bone, smack, just this intense incantory text, and on neon paper that looked like you just photocopied it at your mom's work or something like that for your flyer, neon green and neon pink or whatever, just super goofy office paper, but it was very, very savage. And I think that kind of there's a vibe of our music that's very violent, but not to try to hurt you, but to me it feels harnessing this sort of cathartic violence at times that I feel I saw in that, whereas there's sort of a confrontation and and a visceralness that teeters on the edge, but is very exciting,
Something in the way these boys walk up the street, locking up my vision of the slave. Something in the way I've been taking care of the same, locking up my vision of the slave. The same that's killing me to tell me something's wrong, tell me all I see is vision of none. Merging together, this one is vision of none. What the codes to zone to zone, your personality, getting close to take substitute authenticity, getting closer than any satisfaction, getting close to voluntary.
So I feel like we touched on this a little bit, but it's, I guess, a little bit more of a direct question. So something that's always drawn me to is your lyrics in particular. They're both forward and coded. They hit on a lot of different issues, but unlike a lot of punk, don't pretend to have all of the answers. It's complicated and there's a lot of frustration, both structural and individual. Your two best known songs, Deformative and Pack of Wolves, directly reference or point to some of these issues in subcultural groups. Do you still feel the same kinds of frustrations with subcultural groups now as you did then?
I mean, I sure as you. I mean, I think it's, yeah, I think.
Or to reframe, maybe has punk improved?
I mean, the parts of it I participate in sure have, but not, I mean, it's partially just older self-selected people who are, generally speaking, not being dickwads, so to use the technical term, but it doesn't, I don't know, I mean, it's I think subcultural sort of movements and groups can respond in different ways to the sort of dominant culture in terms of responding to things like sexual violence, but the root causes of sexual violence are going to be there because they're part of the dominant culture. subculture, and there's no wall you can build around any subculture that's going to fully filter that out. You can influence a subculture to make responses within it more likely to happen well, but you can't just build a moat and keep it out. So I think I by and large don't personally have to engage with elements of subcultures that I've been part of, like in punk, where things like groping people in the pit is pretty normalized or whatever. But I don't know that that's necessarily true for other people who might be participating in different parts of it.
Daniel, I mean, I feel like, Pack of Wolves specifically, my lyrics are very directly about, angry fucking nu metal bros sexually assaulting people at Woodstock, and that ilk, and seeing this rise of rise of the angry nu metal jockish bro that, I wrote that song when I was 18. I was shortly out of high school, and just that was kind of a very direct response to that social phenomenon. I don't think that's not that much better. To me, America feels worse. Rise of far right, rise of fascism. The fact that I can go to a fucking protest and Proud Boys and stuff are there and they're getting a pat on the back from the cops is not an improvement. I would say that that is it's something very malignant getting worse. I have no idea if punk's gotten better or worse. I'm not very involved in day-to-day punk stuff, but yeah. In the I'd say I feel in bright side is in the musical subcultures I move through. There's a lot of a lot more or a lot less homophobia, a lot less queerphobia, and a lot more desire for social justice and for people of all, many people to be elevated, and that even just in New York in the last 10 years there's been a strong interest in POC artists being booked, women being booked, femme presenting, trans, that there's more attention to respecting people's gender expression. There's more interest in big upping queer community. There's strong queer music festivals and show groups, and that is I think a huge improvement, where when we were playing, there's certainly I think a nominal welcomingness in the punk scene, but it was pretty straight, and it was it was pretty white, and that's just what it was, and that's not to diss any of those individual people, but it just felt a bit more homogenous, and so I think in musical subcultures I see a strong progressive bent that I'm happy about. In U.S. society, it's extremely upsetting to see where what is the way that the Overton window, and the fact that just the outright violence and threat of violence is horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. I just underscore what they said. It's very well said.
Any additional comments? Cool. So your original album's influences musically have been covered pretty vastly, both in the Tone Glow interview and in the Speaking in Tongues zine that y'all put out. But given the 2-decade gap between then and the current things you're writing, I'm wondering what musically is informing this current round of writing.
Yeah. Sorry. This is Jacob. I guess I can only speak for myself. It's a little hard to say. There's a couple of things, I guess. It's specifically, I guess it's recently I listened to a lot of kind of creative contemporary jazz and dub, whatever, and there's specific things from those things. I think for me, there's somewhere between that and then I've spent the last 20 years making solo music, and that certainly where influences the way I think about making music at this point. In ways that like aren't even specific things, but it just does.
I was just gonna say, I think the ongoing conversation that we have collectively is influential, right? Like what everybody's listening to, like what I was sort of referencing before, like when we get together, we talk, and the stuff that like just learn for me personally, like learning about. I had not heard Julius Easter. Daniel introduced me to Julius Easter. I shouldn't say random. Bought a record today based on David's recommendation, like stuff that's coming in that case, it's minimalist composition. But I don't know that necessarily gets reflected directly in the work. I think it's just having this ongoing conversation that produces new stuff. It's sort of where I sit and then bringing in the stuff that there's one song in particular, and it's in my head all the time these days, and it's like I was asking if it was too early to send new beats yesterday, and like it's this thing I want to get down, and I haven't quite gotten it yet, but it's like all I got is it's shakers and it's dubby, and it's like, and that's like that, but that stuff that God, I'm gonna space the name of the fucking band. We saw them here in Austin, they were fucking great. Anyway, I'll look up the band and get it to you, sorry, I'm rambling. That again, conversation and bringing new stuff and having it co-digested with these folks is sort of what makes it amazing, I think.
This is Dave. Yeah, it's like we have 2 new songs, and I didn't feel, it's kind of funny for me, like I didn't feel like I was thinking about any specific music genre or artist when we were working on it. It felt so just like us as people, and every music thing that's gone through us, like whether experiencing it or playing it ourselves, like it's just like there. I don't know. And also because we're in our 40s, it's just like a different feeling in terms of that. Like I'm not like, it's not as much about like, oh, I heard this cool song, I want to do something like that. It's just like, oh, we're in a room together. Like, what's gonna come out? What kind of noise can we make? Like, I don't know. That's just. I mean, we only have done 2 new songs, but that's how it's felt, and they felt really good. I don't know. But at the same time, outside of the writing, there is, like you're talking about, a constant discussion about music we like. So it's not like we're not mentioning music we like to work together. We do all the time. But I just mean in terms of like when it came down to like putting new stuff together. That's all.
Although, this is Jacob again, and just going off of kind of what Mike and Dan said. I mean, it's interesting, even thinking back, and I feel like most of my musical experience in general have been like this, but like there's something specific with the 5 of us playing. It's like we don't really talk about what we're going to do, and like we all bring these things that are in our heads or whatever, but it's like we get together and we just play, and it like works or it doesn't.
Yeah, it's cute. We never come in and it's like one of us is like, I want to write a part that sounds like I don't know.
Yeah.
Charles Mingus or whatever.
Yeah.
But also like stuff gets transformed. Like I might have an idea that's sort of based in something else. Like one of the new songs that we have, the bass stuff I was working on when we started sharing ideas around was like heavily influenced by this like Eritrean bass guitar player, and it came out sounding probably more like ESG or Talking Heads or something like that. And it's like, it just is like it's how it evolved while we were all playing together. But also a lot of it's just been like being influenced by like friends of ours with people we've been doing shows with. We played with your River School Entanglements in DC in December. And Luke in that band's like an old friend of mine, and like I've seen his bands playing over and over again, or different projects he's been part of, and he's just like musically a huge inspiration to me as a bass player. And again, I'm not trying to do the things he's doing, probably because I don't think I can. But just watching him play, and watching the groups I've seen him play or him solo, the like energy and creativity he's bringing to it is like a huge inspiration and influence on me, even if it's not coming out as sounding anything like that. It's sort of like, it's like drawing on all the stuff we're all listening to, and then what Dan said, we all get into a room, or like, it filters through the interaction of all of us.
Daniel, I think, to bounce off what Hugh and Jacob just said, I also have been working for a long time as a solo electronic musician, and I think that has influenced me in this group in terms of I have had to write like full arrangements of music over and over again, and so I have a much larger capacity now to like hear what other people are doing, and I think that the level of calm in the room when we're working together is higher. Like when we were younger, I think there was a sense of being very driven, being very excited, being at loggerheads sometimes antagonistic, sometimes feeling like not knowing how to communicate, sometimes feeling impatient. You know, I remember thinking, oh, our second record took forever to write, and I'm like, I think we wrote it in 5 months. You know, so you know, and that lack of perspective that comes with like youth and trying to funnel every idea through one project and not even knowing how to like conquer those ideas and not even knowing how to express it and not even knowing how to communicate about it, and different people having different ideas and not knowing how to mediate that, and just the amount of like funneling that went through it at the time created one thing which was very vital, but also, you know, then we fractured. And coming back to it now, it's like, okay, like I actually think in some ways we can collaborate better because there's just more understanding of like what everyone's doing and how it can kind of fall in together. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything specifically like musically that, I mean, my musical listening has continued beyond the band, but I think that just that sort of like, when you're 19 or 20, it's like everything's just like next, you just want to get it, you know, and you hear something, you're like, this is perfect, and you freak out about it, and now it's like, okay, I've spent like 25 years listening to like so many ways that people make music, and then we come together and it's like a great appreciation of like Black Eyes music and a dynamic that's just, this is us, you know, and we can explore it and push it, but it's not the same feeling exactly. And yeah, and to what he was saying, like just mostly seeing like vital performances and seeing people still playing, like, you know, anytime I see somebody play an incredible show, you're like, fuck, kind of bring it, you know what I mean? It just makes you feel like so like aware of how profound music can be. Want to be a part of that, you know?
Or
Yes,
like,
yeah.
this is you, or just like you see something and you go home and it's just like, oh, I want to go home and pick up like an instrument.
Yeah.
I want to go home and pick up a mic, or
Yeah, it's like it wasn't better back in the day. Like back in the day it was great, and then in the middle part between back in the day and now was also great, and now there's like a ton of great music, so it's like the power of music, you know, is to me like a very like non-nostalgic thing. And I think like playing with the group does not feel like that exercise in nostalgia. It feels like exercise in music, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I gotta say, when this is Mike, when Daniel said hearing each other, that really rang for me too. Like, I feel like, and that sense of calm, like being able to process more thoroughly what people are working on and thinking about in the writing space is really, I think that's really, that feels different to me. But again, just different, not better, not worse. Just to get back to the record, the band I was referencing is Chacha Via Circuito, and the song is Pintar el Sol, which is a remix of, I think, Sylvia Garcia, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway.
Thank you. Okay, last question. Would any of you like to share any thoughts on the Ian MacKaye is a PSYOP conspiracy theory?
So what?
What? Is that a thing?
Oh, it's a thing!
MacKaye is a what?
Ian MacKaye is a PSYOP conspiracy theory. There's a whole
What do you
Reddit
mean PSYOP?
thread. So because DC, everyone being very closely related to like government folks, there's like a deep Reddit thread. I had a feeling none of y'all know about this, which is why it was important for me to bring it up. Like people going in deep to be like, oh, his parents were in this and his grandparents were involved in this government thing. And so was Discord Records actually just like a government psyop to distract people from the real politics of the early, like
Wait,
of that time
Can
frame?
you define PSYOP for me? I don't think I understand that term.
It's like,
Okay, a CIA operation.
Yeah, like a government
Got it,
influence.
Got it. Yeah.
And there's a whole deep Reddit thread about it.
I'd like to read that thread.
This is Jacob. The more convincing one I recently read about was Jim Morrison was a psyop.
Yeah, I believe that.
That I would believe.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I
But-
wouldn't really, but like, it's more credible to me.
But
Also, I was
don't
on
think
church committees with Ian's dad. Like, I was,
Ian's family wasn't really involved with the government.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like,
His
there's
grandfather was a newspaper publisher. His dad wrote the crossword for the Washington Post.
And it's like, this is like DC is a government town. The local business is the federal government to a large extent. Although that definitely sublimates the city in a whole different way. But like a lot of people have parents have jobs. My father had a job in the government. Like,
Yeah, if anyone's a CIA, a PSYOP, it's this band.
I'm just kidding. Oh, great. Right on the field day.
We're printing that.
I just like, I will use this opportunity to be a little bit pedantic and say that the internet fucking sucks. I mean, like, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. It's like,
Oh, it does. But it's still funny.
Like, it's
Still
just
funny.
like,
I'm glad you told us about it.
I will find the Reddit thread and email to you.
it's like, just stop believing everything you fucking read. Like, I mean, like, that's like, sorry, that was definitely not to you, but like, just be, I'm gonna shut up, 'cause I was so long, but like, it's just like, I mean, whatever.
This is Daniel. I mean, honestly, I almost like take offense to that. I think it's, memes are funny, and it's funny to see a meme develop and blah blah blah. But like, if Ian is to me, that's a way of that is a psyop. That's a way of saying that art has no power and no meaning, and that someone's hard work is just a bunch of bullshit to distract you. And I'd challenge you to find a more a more I don't want to say more important, but an artist with integrity and commitment to their values, and who is, you know what I mean, just been extremely earnestly engaged in music. I'm like, well then, if you believe that, then don't be involved in music. The music has no power. The music is just a fucking joke all around. And it's not even that Ian is the best musician, or that Fugazi is the most significant band, or Discord's the most, not at all. There's tremendous music of incredible significance across all of history, but it's to me that just feels like taking something that did it right and being like, nah, fuck that. Yeah. And I'm like, well then that's just nihilism. Then what's good? You know what I mean? And then what's not a side? What's important then? I think there's something very empowering about trying to pretend that life has no meaning. Maybe people feel good if you, for a moment, eating some fucking junk food or whatever. You're like, oh, I feel appeased for a second by saying that life's all bullshit and I can sit and
Well, it also
belittle the world.
Well,
But
it's hard to know the intention of that.
But if he's a fucking
I just don't believe that it's as serious as your reality.
Nonetheless, it's I think it's a vibe. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
It's a vibe, and to put it down, I would say that if the only person who could say that is somebody who hasn't had experience with Discord, because there's is 4 or 5 people who send out royalty checks twice a year, have refused any subsidy. You're just the people are giving their lives to this project that they believe in, and it's you can see it. It's plain to see if you engage with it. So if you're at a distance and you're on Reddit and you're this is all bullshit. Enjoy your stupid.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that was my ticket into thinking about things differently. like, and not like in a, I just can't even, like, whatever. I mean, like, like Daniel's saying, I think I'm taking offense to it. It makes me really mad, and like, you know, I don't know. It's like Daniel's saying, like, it's fucking like, I have a friend who will talk about the fact like his mother-in-law, you know, every time he has a success in his business, his mother-in-law is like, I prayed for you, that's why it happened. It's like, that takes away my fucking agency, right? Like, that kind of shit takes away your agency. And it's not exactly, it's not analogous, but there's something similar, like Daniel's saying, there's something in that makes me feel like that. Like, you're trying to take away this thing that you don't fucking understand. Just shut the fuck up.
Well, but here's the other thing too, is what I will say about that, which just piggybacking on you, this is Hugh, is that like, sniping about people who have done like really obviously good work that's like incredibly visible, that has like changed people's lives, including ours. Like, it's almost like, to me, it's like a refusal to take responsibility for how you show up in the world.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, to me, it's like, not to like canonize anyone as being perfect or a saint, but like, a lot of the people who've been involved in Discord, and I would also just say, like, if Ian's family is being sort of like roped into this too, in terms of like whatever their potential roles and like weird shit is, like, I don't know a lot of better examples of like showing up in the world in ways that are respectable and like just honest and decent, but also that involve those people, like, you know, and Ian in particular, just like is a person who takes responsibility for how he shows up in the world.
But maybe Black Eyes is the psyop, and you should vote Biden. 2024.
Oh my god.
I'd be curious to see the thread, because to me it's like, I don't feel that passionate to respond to it, because it's just like, it'd be like if you were like, there's a thread that says your mother's a space alien. It'd be like, well, there's not, so what do you want me to say?
Are you sure?
It's so ridiculous.
You're sure?
Well, she might be, but
I mean,
I just haven't seen it.
Your mom's pretty intense.
Well, thank you for indulging all of that. It's been
Yeah.
really fun talking to you.
And that was Mace's conversation with Black Eyes. Thank you so much, Mace, for taking the helm there, and thanks to Black Eyes for indulging them in the conversation. I had a great time listening. Thanks to all y'all for listening as well. And if you had a great time, you can read all the other interviews that we've had in Sparks at patreon.com/humanmachine. Those interviews include Tom Schlatter from Hundreds of AU and Sasha, Drew Spigieli from Circle Takes the Square, Aaron Jade Santillan from Masanera, and Luca Cassandra Carver from Split Silk. Go to patreon.com/humanmachine and sign up to read through that and all the other issues of Sparks. And until next time, take care and do good things.